There we go. Hello. Hi, everyone. Ooh, sorry. Welcome to MVP's Unplugged. We're not unplugged, as you can tell, so that's kind of a misnomer. Real-world Microsoft Exchange Server designs and deployments. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you were able to come and get a seat. We sold out we had over 700 people for this 345 people room, so that's good. I'd like to let everybody introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Siggy.
Yeah. That's it. Okay, my name is Siegfried Jagodt. I'm basically working with Allgeier PS, a professional services company that does, of course, Microsoft consulting services in Germany, as you hear. Yeah, and I'm an MVP for 3 years now, but I'm in the business for like whenever Exchange 4.0, I remember. Yeah, quite a long time. Nicholas.
It kind of sounds like an AA class. Hi, my name's Nicholas. I've been doing Exchange for 15 or 16 years now, and recovery is going well. We're still on premises, so that's okay. I work, as my accent gives away, I live and work in South Africa, and do Exchange on premises, Exchange hosted, and Exchange online.
And my name's Jeff Guillet. I'm a Microsoft MVP, Microsoft Certified Master, and I'm a Principal Systems Architect for SPS in San Francisco. I work out of the San Francisco Bay Area. SPS is a very large company. And I've been working with Mail since Microsoft Mail and various versions of Exchange. We're missing one person. Paul Robichaud was unable to make his flight. He had some sort of delay. He may make some grand entrance. That's what he's normally doing. He'll come running down the hall and say, "I'm here, I'm here," and everybody's supposed to clap really
Standing
loud.
ovation would be good.
Yeah, that would be really good if he shows. So this is going to be I hope, a very dynamic experience. Everybody, if you have questions about your deployment, that's what we're here for. Our view is can be somewhat different from Microsoft in that we can talk about third-party tools, our experiences with those, and sometimes when our personal guidance does not match with Microsoft's, just from our own deployments, what we see works. So we're happy to take any questions that you have. I will start with some information. Through the power of Yammer, I know that 40% of this room is looking to migrate from 2010 to 2016. That's amazing, 40%. Now, there were only 5 votes. But still, that's a staggering number. So if anyone wants to make their way to a mic, or we have mic runners on both sides of the stage here, they'll run a mic out to you. The first question gets a shirt, Microsoft Exchange shirt. Siggy will now model it for you.
Although we should talk what we're not allowed to talk about yet. 2016.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit.
Okay.
No, we're not going to give away too much. But I'll actually ask to kick it off. I'll start our
Hello there.
panel. Oh, there we are. Good. Hi.
I have a question about your recommendation on database size versus what's supported by Microsoft. They say a 2 terabyte database size for Exchange 2010, but you all know how long it takes to reseed a 2 terabyte database. What do you recommend?
Smaller.
Well, thank you. That answers my question.
I like the 200 gig, under a terabyte. Whatever you're comfortable with watching seed across a network, depending on where those nodes are. At a customer with horrible bandwidth between 2 areas, it worked fine when we set up replication when the network was first designed, and then we did the migrations, and that was kind of like spoon feeding replication through as you migrated mailboxes, they migrated over. But then they had to have a reseeding event, and trying to move, even at that point, it was 400 gigs across this lousy rubber band connection was awful. So I'll give you the standard consulting answer for me. It depends.
Depends.
And it really depends on how much you're able to tolerate for a replication.
Okay, thanks.
I don't know. Do you guys have different?
Well, I would echo Jeff. I've seen reseed events take days and sometimes weeks. And you think that's kind of a little bit pointless when you're wanting to talk about high availability even within a region. And so to me, there's an operational efficiency that you lose when your database becomes too big. And the exception there, of course, is when you're betting that your resilience comes from a SAN vendor who's made you some kind of a promise in terms of how quickly they can back you up and restore you. But you find that that type of promise quickly falls over when you actually need to reseed across the wire as opposed to restore from a snapshot. So it actually just depends on why you've got a DAG in the first place. And if you've got a DAG on a SAN, then that can change the size of what you want to deploy.
And I will add one other thing to that. If that customer had followed our advice and done the prescriptive architecture and had a 4-node DAG instead of a 3-node DAG, that wouldn't be a problem, because they'd be replicating intra-site instead of across the WAN. So it's we try to beat it into people. The PA is your friend.
What's your size? Large.
Well,
That's a big question, yeah? Okay. Yeah, I totally agree to do. Well, my customers mainly, when you consider a traditional backup solution, then you normally end up being smaller than, of course, something like 200 or whatever your speed of recovery should be. Okay.
So with the new changes in the certificates and going from 2010 to 2013, are you seeing people just change their whole namespace or using internal CAs to compensate for the .corps and the .coms and so forth? And what kind of problems have you seen around the new certificate changes coming down in November this year?
okay, are you talking about internal namespaces not being...
internal namespaces, split brain, DNS.
Right. Generally, no problems with that. For me, the only time I've seen a problem with that is internal application servers are trying to talk to that internal namespace, and so they're expecting a cert with that name on it, in which case it's probably easier to do split level DNS and change the application so it's using the corp namespace. But sometimes, it depends. You can make it work.
Well, I just ended up basically going through and changing my namespaces on everything to .com in order to support the new certificate standard. So every one of my clients basically went out there and found a .corp somewhere. And I don't know whether it was in my EWS or in my Outlook Anywhere settings, but everybody got the message. The message went away. And I took a ding on it. So I was kind of wondering, are other people seeing those types of issues?
You?
No. But I'm a huge fan of split DNS and very often wildcard certs as well. So the stuff on the inside is called the same stuff on the outside, and 2 names on the cert, and very little complications.
You can only put the single name. You can only use the .com or you can't use a .corp and a .com in the same.
Sorry. So when we do split DNS, whatever your outside name is, so if it's mail.contoso.com on the outside, it'll be mail.contoso.com on the inside. So with split DNS, whatever's on the outside is on the inside.
Yeah. Outside resolves to an external IP. Right?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Question in front, and then we'll take another one in the back.
Testing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm from Belgium, work for a big company in Belgium, a small company for you guys probably, with 35,000 mailboxes more or less.
That's good size.
Yeah, and the challenge that we are facing is my management is asking me to give real-world SLA figures, so for end-user experience. So not only back-end uptime, because they're not interested in that. We also have a DAG with 12 servers, so everything goes relatively easy, but they want to have real-world numbers. When are users actually experiencing downtime? How are performance issues, stuff like that. And I find it really difficult because currently we have a SCOM and orchestrator. I do know it's a bit of a crossover question, but I don't get the impression that the data that I can get from those packages is really covering. What I want is to have some kind of synthetic transactions or something like that.
Right.
But representative synthetic transactions. And it's difficult to get that. So I was just wondering what the industry uses as a standard for a question like this.
For the users that need, or companies that need those kind of metrics, I point them at SCOM. It does synthetic transactions, it does measure them, and you can create dashboards, and you can really kind of extend it to make it very easy for your executive staff to look at a dashboard and see how things are going, and you can look back on the historic data, so how it's trending over time. Out of the box, there's really nothing. So,
well, we did have a few consultants, because I'm not a SCOM expert, I must admit. I do know Exchange and Link, but I don't know SCOM. And the problem is that we have a few people visit us. They've tried several solutions. Apparently, SCOM natively didn't do what we wanted to do. I don't know exactly why, because it's true that there are synthetic transactions, but apparently. But you guys do have experience?
I haven't had experience with them, but you might want to check out eNow Software. They have a vendor booth, and they do exchange reporting.
eNow.
They may have a solution that does that, but I can't say for sure myself.
I'd also point you to the third-party space. There's a whole bunch of stuff that does all kinds of synthetic transactions and allows you to do SLAs. And if you are truly interested in SLA type management, then you may want to talk to your business about 3 tiers with an exchange. So you've got client access, you've got transport, and you've got storage, and then you report on a tier of each one of those. And that gives you a better representation as opposed to the subjective thing from the customer of the customer being Outlook. Is it working and is it fast enough? Mm-hmm. Which, is it fast enough? Is it fast enough for what? Yeah. But there is software out there in the third-party space that'll do it in a very standardized way.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
Being the exchange implementers on the field, what's your recommendation over DAS versus SAN? And what are the benefits of DAS versus SAN? Of course, we have the great article from Ras, but what's the adoption rate? What is the adoption rate in the industry? Coming from a financial industry, we are regulated by God knows the number of regulations that we have to adhere to. How do you see DAS adoption in the customers? And I would like to take this opportunity to ask the people here, how many people have implemented DAS? And
show of hands?
Yeah, can we see a show of hands? How many people are on DAS? Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
So
should be more of you, a lot.
But
more.
wait a minute. There's another perspective to that. How many have real DAS? So a single hard disk is applied to your servers. So JBOD. Oh,
nice.
Yeah, that's good.
Very good.
Yeah.
And I have a follow-up question also. So we are heavily Citrix VDI organization, and we are depending on Outlook Online mode for the majority of the organization. So whenever there is a blip, database fails over in Exchange 2013, as you all know, right? But that translates into a outage for end users, considering that OST cannot be put on a file share. How do you recommend? How do you design this? On a high level, based on your customers.
You want to take that? I'll take it. All right. So, what you must not be using 2013 or Outlook 2013.
We are in the process of, migrating from 2013.
So the slider is your friend in 2013. and 2016. So you can slide how much data, and in 2016 you can go down to like a day or something. It's crazy. But that's the slider that determines how much OST mail you have on that, especially whether you got laptops with small SSDs or something. You're worried about them having a
It's not laptops, actually. It's a VDI session.
Oh, okay.
You cannot have OSTs on a file share or on a VDI, non-persistent desktop.
The easiest thing with VDI is just to run them all online. So if you don't want to mess about with persistent versus non-persistent profiles, then just keep it all online and consider if you do have Exchange 13, then you may want to be rather aggressive in terms of what's in your archive. So whatever's online. Welcome, Paul.
There he is.
Hey.
Woo! The man, the myth.
The mystery.
Hey, look how he walks in.
Yeah.
By the way, sorry to be late. If any of you are on Twitter and you would like to drop @Delta a line and thank them for getting me here in one place. Actually, they did a good job. It was a mechanical problem. They had to completely power down the airplane and reboot it. And when they turned it back on, it said, now configuring your airplane, installing update 4 of 75. Do not turn off your airplane. I stole that joke from Michel Derouille, by the way. I just want to be honest about that. So please, carry on.
Yeah, so small mailboxes, large archives. And if you, I would just say, just try and keep them as online as possible in a VDI environment because of the performance impact of not having those OSGs.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question. Y'all actually stole my question. How much JBOD do y'all see in the wild? Like, I was shocked by the number of hands that went up, but how common is that?
Oh, there. I will say that in my experience, I talk JBOD. I get them to buy into it. They love it. And then they end up going SAN because they've already spent the money on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree to that.
So the adoption is pretty poor unless it is usually a small shop who doesn't have a SAN yet. Or they're doing a IT upgrade. They're starting to upgrade their SAN, and at that time they had budget and they decided they were going to do Exchange at the same time. And I'm like, well, don't spend your money on that. Buy this. It is so much easier to manage. It has, you own the whole stack. You own the server. If it's a physical server, sometimes it's virtual. Sometimes it's virtual.
I think the biggest factor that I see when I talk to customers in their acceptance of JBOD is how much they know or how much they think they know, right? Customers who are very experienced with Exchange or where they have high operational maturity, a lot of times will say, well, no, we don't want to do that. We've always had SANs. SANs are good. We've already paid for them. We have CapEx sunk. We're going to keep them. Customers that are relatively new to Exchange, especially if they're moving from an older version, seem, in my experience, to be a lot more willing to listen. It doesn't mean they'll always deploy it, but I'm seeing more and more customers accepting the benefits of that when, as Jeff said, it comes up to IT infrastructure repurchase time, and they say, well, let's see, I could buy a new SAN, but wait, those nice Exchange guys were just here telling me I don't need a SAN for Exchange, so maybe I can spend that money on something else.
On a related note, I'll just say that I've got a bit of an echo. I don't know if anybody else has feedback or whatever. The thing that I often see, if you're doing a design, you have to do jet stress, right? You have to test the disk subsystem. I don't care what you think you know about it, you have to test it. So a very common thing is I'll tell them, okay, we're going to do a jet stress test on it, make sure that it exercises it. It's going to run during the day. And they're like, whoa, 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 we need to run it at night. I'm like, well, Exchange isn't only going to run at night. You need to run it during the day because you want to know that, A, you're getting enough IOPS out of it, that you're also using the calculator, right? So you know what your IOPS are, or what you need. You run jet stress to get the IOPS, make sure that it's performing, and more importantly, you're making sure that the disk subsystem, when it's being exercised on its worst day for Exchange, it's not going to knock over all your other workloads. And if you're not sure and you're like, I'm very uncomfortable with running it then, well, that starts another conversation about JBOD. Well, then if if you're concerned about it, why don't you give it its own disks, and it's going to be a lot cheaper and easier to manage. There was a question in the middle there.
Hey guys, thanks so much. How do you plan for public folders for 2013?
I actually like
unfortunately,
them,
we can't.
But Siggy,
Yeah, Siggy,
that's
this
yours.
one's for you.
Thank you, Paul. I love you. So
We do too.
first question is, you're using public folders?
Yeah, heavily. We have more public folders than users.
Oh, good. So you're the guy that has 1 to 2 million public folders?
Not that many, but
What?
a lot. Not that many.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard of that size. So what's the size of your public folder infrastructure, if I might ask?
It's actually not tremendously large. It's about a gig or so in our domestic and about 700 meg in our UK. The real issue is just the sheer number of them. They've grown.
Yeah.
Permissions before some of my team was involved. Permissions had anybody could create a subfolder. So it ended up turning into like a file archive for a lot of departments. So we're trying to run reports. We're trying to figure out exactly how to do it. But all the sizing guidelines we see, especially from Ross Smith, kind of ignores public folders. They just...
Ross is in the back of the room, by the way. So Ross...
So wonderful calculator, but you left out a big chunk for me.
Well, if you said it's gigs. So how many? You said 1 gig.
Yeah, I mean it's not. It's not
the size, but it's the number of public folders you have.
Trying to figure out how to squeeze them into the
1 gig
calculator.
hierarchy.
Yeah. Well, I know companies that have 6 gig hierarchies.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So something. So well, and you're coming from which version? Exchange 2007, Exchange 2010.
10.
Yeah, 2010. Well, basically, you can get a feeling if you run the public folder migration commandlets for testing. So there is a couple of information available, and there's also a session about public folder migration, which is on Wednesday from Brian Day, and he talks about the latest and greatest. So I would suggest you go there. I'm doing a lab on Wednesday afternoon where we do actually a migration. So my recommendation would be get your right numbers. And the first question is, if you can get rid of public folders, get rid of public folders. But many of my customers cannot get rid, at least fast. Yeah, they can. It's a very long process to get rid of public folders. So if you need to migrate them, doing the commandlets, you can get a feeling how they behave. You can open up the target environment for single mailboxes. So you once you're sure about the migration process, you move everybody over.
But as far as sizing for them, that's what we keep running into.
A single public folder mailbox can grow on-prem up to, what's the maximum? I think 100 gig, but you shouldn't do that. Yeah, so it's wisely to don't exceed 25 gigs for public folder mailbox. So if you have more data, then you just add more mailboxes. The second perspective you need to consider is the amount of users that access those public folder mailbox. So if, and the recommendation here is 2,000 for public folder mailbox. So if you have 10,000 public folder users, you're looking for 5 public folder mailboxes. Yeah, and then of course split them equally in size. That's how I would approach it. But it's really about the details here, yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
And feel free to approach me later.
Personally, I don't mind public folders. I think they have a use case. They're very beneficial.
Yeah. No.
See,
Paul,
Tony
to be honest,
calls them the cockroach of Exchange. But
come on, that's my joke, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. But I mean, they definitely have a use case. I actually had a customer who migrated from public folders to site mailboxes and had to migrate them back to public folders.
Yeah,
because they needed persistent read or separate read, for each user. So.
Yeah. No, sorry.
No, I wanted to throw in, I had a question in the class yesterday from a customer who had a million items and a million items in his hierarchy in 2010, 13 locations around the world.
Yeah, don't want to ask me that question, or
Oh, yeah,
no?
it's yours.
No, just final statement. I think the first technology that really is capable of replacing public folders will be groups. That's my personal opinion. So modern groups are really very similar to what you experience in Exchange public folders. So if you consider alternatives, and I did a very long project with a large customer of mine, it's Siemens, where we talked about that quite a lot, and we found out that there's use cases in different areas, but with groups, we get the chance to move them over and forget them, hopefully. But that will, of course, that requires Exchange Online, and I guess you're on premise, so that's not an option for you, at least right now. Maybe tomorrow in the Exchange 2016 architecture session from Ross, maybe he has something there. I don't know about that.
How about on this side of the room? Okay. It's on.
There we go.
There you go.
So a follow-up to the public folder question. He had a gig inside. So when you have a total public folder infrastructure of, say, a terabyte and a half and like 1.7 million public folders, just the folders, is there any hope for that?
No. The answer is you stay on Exchange 2010. Yeah, and you hope that the next version even supports Exchange 2010.
Yeah.
No, with that massive amount, well, basically, I said I worked on a project where we got rid of 500,000 public folders. It took us 3 years and a lot of investment and talking and everything, and we ended up having, I think we are right now around 950,000, so we just are a little bit underneath a million, but this size grows by 20,000 folders a month. So, yeah, you can talk to your users, and I wish you good luck on that.
This is only for Los Angeles. This is not even the rest of the company.
Yeah, and I guess if you have that massive amount of public folders, there are very big, important business processes behind their usage. So you really cannot get rid of them easily.
All right.
So my recommendation would be leave the infrastructure as is for the public folders and just do the migration for the mailboxes, if you are considering migration.
That doesn't mean you can't migrate your users to 2013. You can still use 2010 as your public folder infrastructure. Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, right.
Oh, they're in the middle? Oh.
You got the mic? Great. Go for it.
Currently migrating from 2010 to 2013 onto JBOD on HP SL4540 servers, and HP seems to be a big fan of doing RAID 1 on all of your drives on every node of your DAG. I was wondering if anybody's actually doing that, and if so, what are the benefits? They seem to claim that it reduces administrative overhead.
What does HP sell?
That's my opinion, too. But my server infrastructure guys are leaning towards the HP.
So you're doing a DAG, right?
Right.
How many nodes?
4 nodes.
You have more redundancy there than you're going to get out of a mirror pair.
I know.
Okay.
I just had to get somebody to actually answer that so I
down?
can go back to my server infrastructure guys and say the experts said no.
Yeah.
Second part of that question.
So we can point you to the actual HP experts who will tell them the correct answer. Because what the HP guys are telling you is not the correct answer.
That'd be fabulous. Second part, we also have ambiguous namespace in our 2010 environment. And what are your considerations as opposed to changing the Casarray name to changing the namespace for the new installation?
So what are you concerned about there?
Well, if you change the Casarray name, it's going to blow up a certain amount of Outlook profiles. And we also have a Citrix VDI environment. Okay,
so are we talking about changing your Casarray name from 10 to 13?
Correct.
Okay, so what's your HTTP namespace called today?
Mail.seattlechildrens.org.
So what's it going to be called tomorrow when you're running on 2013?
our external, well, we're looking at now changing the external namespace to email.seattlechildrens.org.
Besides the rename, so you know that in 2010 that CASRA is a MAPI object.
Right.
And in 2013 we don't have a MAPI object anymore.
There's no CAS array.
Right.
So
there's a namespace.
There is a namespace, but it's an HTTP namespace. And so
but for the migration, we were told we needed to correct that ambiguous namespace issue. Never mind.
So we have an article on the eHello blog that walks through the whole ambiguous namespace and the recommendations on what steps to follow to get out of that issue. So read that one.
Yeah, myself, I've never had a customer with an ambiguous namespace, so I haven't had to do that. What's going on? Okay. Next question? Anybody? Okay, I'll ask you guys. What's the most challenging? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Hello.
Yep.
Archiving. Right now we're on 2010, going to 2013. Do you like the archiving in 2013, or you like the 2016, or do you recommend a third party?
So that's a really interesting question. I have a session on that coming up next, but you won't be there because you'll be at Julia's keynote, so I guess I should answer it now.
Oh, no, I won't.
So the thing about archiving that a lot of people don't recognize or don't think about when they talk archiving is that what archiving means to an Exchange person and what archiving means to like a records preservation specialist or an archivist, two completely different things. So I encourage people to think about archiving in Exchange as like a mini storage for your house. It's an additional place to put stuff. So within that context, the archiving that's in 2013 is pretty darn solid. You essentially are giving your users an additional mailbox. You can use retention policies and retention policy tags to help sweep stuff into that mailbox. But it's still a mailbox. And so unless and until you flip the switch for single item retention or put a mailbox on hold, then users can still go in, just like they can go to the mini storage and take everything that's in the mini storage and throw it in the dumpster. They can still go into the archive and remove everything that's there, and then you have no more archive. So for your archiving, are you primarily looking for a way to give users a place to put more stuff? Or are you trying to meet retention requirements for a particular target?
Retention.
Okay. So you can certainly do that with Exchange. What's the longest duration you have to keep stuff for?
Probably a year.
Oh, okay. Well, that's easy then. Yeah, I would.
Or it could be longer. It depends on they're making that right now. You know management.
Is this like that ambiguous namespace thing we were just talking about? The reason I ask, I'm working right now with a customer they're a regulated electric utility. And so their lifetime for retention, they have some stuff that must be retained forever. Well, forever is a long time, right? So I can talk to them about how they're going to archive things, but there are certain records that, because they have to keep forever, they need to be looking at bunker under the mountain style retention systems, because if it's really legally important for them to keep those records for that length of time, it's a little bit different scope. In your case, if most of the records you have to keep for a year, then using Exchange archiving, in particular if you couple it with Exchange Online archiving, means that you're out of the archiving business. You're not buying storage. You're not doing anything other than creating a policy, turning mailboxes on for archiving, and letting Exchange do the work. So I think that's probably going to be a pretty good fit for you.
Well, we have an archiving system, Documentum, but we're kind of moving away from that into a SharePoint system. And then we want to set it so that we have a year, but we might be able to make that year become 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the retention policies that management want to set.
Well, one of the things I'm doing with this utility customer right now that has been a huge pain in the ear is that they set up mail-in document libraries in SharePoint, and they have people archive stuff by dragging it into the document library. And that sounds like a great plan until you consider all the things that you don't get from using SharePoint to archive email. Now, the nice thing about SharePoint, when you set it up properly with the Record Center, is that you get cross-silo discovery, and that's super valuable. But if you're using SharePoint as the actual place where you store that email, you might want to think about whether that's the best long-term solution for what you need.
We've got a 3-parse, so we're happy. It has, it all depends on, like how long retention policies are going to affect that. So
no, in a year, I mean, that's a tractable length of time. When you start getting into 5, 10, 15, 25 years, things get harder. But I think with a year, you can manage very nicely with what comes in the box with Exchange.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I got one here, and then you. Yeah.
Hello. I have a question piggybacking off of the retention policy. A little bit separate. We're about to deploy a retention policy brand new to 40,000 mailboxes.
Awesome.
So, yeah, we'll see. So when I pull that trigger, we'll see. So my question around that is, I've searched and tried to find the best practices, but 2 questions. One, when you apply it to that many, is it best practice to stagger that amongst databases and let it replicate in? At first, the hitch is we won't have much mail deleting because we're applying like a 5-year down through all folders and then like a 55, 60-day policy according to if it's inbox sent, that sort of thing. So there won't be a lot because we have a third-party archiving tool as well, just tagging the items. So that's the first question. Is there any concern about letting it rip, setting the policy to tag it, with the main policy on all mailboxes at once?
I guess my first answer to that would be to turn around and ask you how well you've tested it. Right? Anytime you're talking about doing something to 40,000 anything, that's kind of the first question I want to have. If you're comfortable with the idea that the tags are going to work the way that you want them to, one of the nice things about 2013 is that the workcycle manager is going to take care to make sure that MFA doesn't strangle your servers when you roll those tags out. Having said that, I think there's a lot to be said for a rollout of that scope, to roll it out on some test mailbox or some pilot mailboxes in production, see what happens, verify that it's doing what you think it is, monitor the performance of the server to make sure that you're work cycling the way you expect it to, instead of just pushing the button and then going home for the weekend. I think a phase rollout is probably a little bit simpler.
Yeah, we do have it on some pilot mailboxes already, and that's kind of what we've been doing. And we're 2010 completely still. We're not moved to 2013.
Okay.
And then the last question, or the second question I had around that is, what you talk about the work cycle, and I know you can schedule the work cycle, but ours is default. When does that come into play? Because I notice even with the pilot mailboxes, sometimes it's days before somebody's Outlook client shows up the tag. And even on the policy tabs on the different folders, it's sometimes days before they ever get that. And like my boss, for instance, we're trying to roll it out in a week or 2. We have to communicate to these, and he says, hey, what's the time frame?
Right.
I can't give a good time frame because it's so random. So where are you at there? What do you think on that? I mean, does it work over the week? Does it work over 2 weeks with that many mail? I mean, we just applied it to 20 pilot mailboxes. It took forever.
That seems like an unusually long time for 20 mailboxes.
Yeah.
How is the performance and the health of your servers overall? Is it generally pretty good?
It's generally, we have problems very few far and in between. It's a 3-node DAG. It's nothing fancy, but we don't have any trouble whatsoever. Got a couple of sites. Replication is fine. There's no issues.
Do your users see it, your test users see it in OWA?
They see the same instance
They see
in OWA and Outlook.
the same lag,
Yes.
it doesn't show up in OWA?
Some people get it, some people don't, but we've checked it across OWA and on-prem, or the Outlook rather, I say on-prem, Outlook client, and both are the same. But I do have
that sounds suspicious.
That's weird. Yeah.
We have a display problem as well where some people are showing the wrong policy on their inbox and sent items, like the system folders we have, but their items are tagged correctly. So that's another weirdness as well. But we have a case for that. So.
Well, for the perf issues, I think what I would say is turn up logging as high as you can get it on the MFA, and see whether you see anything obnoxious that it's doing. I mean, that's a very generic suggestion, I realize, but I think that's going to be the first step to start getting a handle on it.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
Question in the front here.
I have one question. We have an Exchange environment, 100,000 mailboxes, highly resilient. We're just standing up. And we have a request from a particular entity of our company that wants to load 35 mailboxes into Office 365 Exchange Online. And I've tried a million times to try to say why that's not necessarily the best idea for them to do, and obviously the amount of work that's going to create for us on the outside. And I'm trying to figure out if there's anything that you can possibly provide that may be able to say why that's not necessarily a great idea at this time. If we were migrating the entire environment, it'd be one thing, but knowing that we have Exchange 2013 on-prem, highly resilient, I can't understand why we'd go through that amount of pain to put 35 mailboxes on the cloud.
Why do they want just 35 mailboxes in the cloud?
Because the new executive coming in came from a company that had Office 365, and that's his toy. I want it.
Okay. Assuming you want coexistence, be able to see free, busy, onboard, offboard.
Yes.
You got to go hybrid. Nothing you can do about that.
Yeah, we were going to go hybrid anyways because we still wanted to at least offer Exchange Online archiving. It goes down that line, but that wasn't enough. They actually want the mailboxes out there.
Well, if you have to go hybrid for archiving, then you've done the vast majority of the work that you have to enable mailbox moving too. So
we weren't necessarily wanting putting the edge presence in. Just one more expense.
What do you do for desktop licensing, by the way, for the Office suite?
There are some who have purchased the E3 SKU, so they're licensed that way, but the majority of it is, just licensing on the desktop side itself, just an enterprise agreement.
Gotcha. I don't know. I mean, frankly, 35 mailboxes doesn't sound like a lot to justify that level of effort, but if you're already thinking about establishing hybrid for archiving, then it's not really any extra effort to enable the mailbox moves. Now, that's a separate question from what happens if you give in to this demand and you let those 35 mailboxes go over the fence. What's going to happen then? And, I think we all know how that story plays out.
I was just trying to figure out if there was some kind of real technical reason why our on-prem solution may offer them better performance, better service, better coexistence with other mailboxes than to take those 35 and just put them on the island out there.
See, I'd be arguing the other way. I'd say, hey, once you have that presence established, then boom, you have instant disaster recovery and resiliency because at any time you can move mailboxes to the cloud when you need to. I've seen that tactic used at more than one customer that was reluctant to start putting mailboxes in the cloud. So maybe I'm not the best guy to answer your question.
Yeah.
Hello? Yeah. So I'm hearing a lot of talk about moving to the cloud, and I think Microsoft is very much pushing to the cloud. It's not news. It's been so for a couple of years, but now you only hear about the cloud anymore. And what I feel in Europe especially is that there's quite a large fear to move to something that is being managed by basically an American company. I know that there is something different in the EU because it's an Irish company and everything like that. But from a sales perspective, more or less, but I mean a technical sales, it's very difficult to convince people that their data is safe. How do you guys sell that to your customers? Because cloud is coming, whether we want it or not. On-premise, I don't know how long it will still exist, probably still a few years. But more and more people will want to go to the cloud, but there is still this fear of what's going to happen with our data. Are there people from foreign agencies that are able to read my mails? When I put files on there, who is going to be able to read them? Especially where I work at the Belgian railways. They are incredibly fearsome of other people reading their information. I don't know what I can tell them. If you have to believe the different sources everywhere, then yeah, the NSA can read everything. I don't know whether that's a fact or not. So I'm just wondering, how do you guys sell that to your customers? Or how do you guys defend something like that?
Well, being German means we are always concerned. And I see exactly that situation as well. But the major factor for moving to the cloud is basically normally money related. They want to save costs, because if they fear the stuff that you mentioned, basically they are not considering cloud at all. Yeah. However, there are situations where you can use. I know of a company, for example, they want to use Exchange Online. However, they encrypted all emails. So now they have to have a proxy in between Exchange Online and their clients in order to access their data. And of course, then Office 365 usage is limited. Yeah. So the big question that I normally ask is really, if you want to save the costs, you have to trust your provider. It's very similar to we as the IT people, like the admins. Our company trusts us that we run the servers, even though they know that we would be able, in some situation, to access the data.
But can the provider be trusted? That is the question.
That is a question, but I don't think it's the right question, because in this case, and I will lump Microsoft and Google and Apple, which is a cloud service provider, although most people don't think about it. Those companies are not the ones that are rendering up your data, right? The thing that has scared my customers the most is the thought that a national intelligence agency is going to get data. But you know what? If those guys want your data, they're going to get it. No, I mean, I say it with all seriousness. They have legal means. They can issue subpoenas. They can work with partner intelligence agencies in other countries. So if the NSA wants Belgian Railways data, there are some legal means that they can go about to, legal is probably not the right word. There are some ways that they can do that through the court system. And then there are some extra legal means that they have proven to be very talented at. So I guess my argument would be your data is probably safer if it's in Microsoft's data center than it is in your data center, because Microsoft has more guards, they have more physical security measures, they probably do more background checks and have more information security controls than most companies do. Now, for a government or a privatized agency like yours, that may not be true. But I know that very few of my customers have the degree of infrastructure investment that Microsoft has. And so when I say, okay, would you rather someone break into your unsecured building in an industrial park in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, or would you rather take the bet that someone has to penetrate Microsoft's network and Microsoft's data center to get your data? Then that makes them feel better about it. That's
actually a pretty good argument you made there. Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have something to add about that. Well, Microsoft is still at court, I think, regarding this discussion about that the NSA can access anything outside the United States. And that's, of course, key here, that your tenant in Office 365 uses the European region, because then it runs under the European law. And I can put you in touch with a lawyer in Germany if you want to. He's specialized on Office 365 related stuff in the IT. He's also an MVP. He's pretty amazing about that. And you can discuss with him, I would recommend. He's good there. And he also explains you the German side of the legal stuff that you're mentioning. Yeah. But of course, at the end, you have to trust your service provider. It's always about trust. And if you trust the service provider to do the job he's paid for, then, of course, that question is not in the room anymore, I would say.
Yeah, but the problem is, like you've also stated, not with the service provider, but with the laws of the company under which the company is active. And I think there's a certain law, if I'm not mistaken, that even if there's a mother company in the US with a daughter company in the EU, then they are still under the law of the US. It's something like that. I know it's a very difficult.
There was a case earlier, or last year, when Microsoft was served a records request through the court system for a company that had our data in a foreign tenant, and Microsoft said, "Nope, we're not going to do that."
Yeah, is that right?
And that battle is still ongoing, but I think that sets a really good precedent for showing that Microsoft is not just going to randomly start handing out data unless they're actually compelled to, as opposed to just having an agency ask nicely.
Yeah, okay.
I think that helped their case quite a bit when they did that.
But that's the problem with Canada right now in the United States. We don't have that. Our Canadian government says do not go into the cloud because we don't know where it is. And right now, yeah, they're all in the United States. HP's supposed to be opening up stuff in Canada, but because of the law's separation between Canada and the United States, they warn do not put your data in the United States just because the laws aren't there.
I just want to make a comment there in terms of governmental access to data. and I've done work for secure agencies and that kind of thing. And so, irrespective of what country you live in, your government has the resources to access whatever they want to, be it within the law or outside of the law. And so, to pick on a government in a country and worry about them, you may as well worry about your own government and access to the data that they have of yours. So I think the trust argument is, do you trust another government less than you trust your own?
We are part of our own government.
No,
in certain.
I understand that. And so I've seen this is very much a trust thing. And so when one government department, the first one, makes that step into the cloud, then they start following like sheep, because someone needs to take that first risk. Mm-hmm. And once that happens, I find that government departments very much follow, oh, well, they've done it, so now we trust the system. But however, my point there is in terms of governmental reach and access to information, governmental resources and encryption, all that kind of thing, that's a very, very woolly thing. And so I would worry less about putting stuff into a Microsoft data center than putting it into a neutral third-party data center where it's easier to get access to data. It's incredibly difficult getting stuff out of Microsoft Data Center once it's in there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay.
So bringing it back on-prem for a minute. There is an Office 365 MVP group about another session like this, and Unplugged, at the end of the week on Friday with Tony Redmond and myself and Nick and I forget who else, but we'll be covering Office 365 deployments as well. I have a question for the audience. How many people are currently doing a migration? Show of hands. It's about half, a little less. How many people are thinking about doing a migration? Or planning it? A little less than that. Okay. If you're at all interested in Exchange 2016, which there'll be lots of announcements on tomorrow. But if you're interested in getting involved with the TAP for that, Dave Espinoza is in the back of the room on an orange shirt, waving his hands. Right.
Yeah, everybody turn around and look at Dave.
Everybody look at Dave. Dave likes to be looked at.
That didn't come out right, Jeff.
Yeah, please see Dave. He's very interested in getting people on TAP. We're now at production builds. So if you're thinking about it, you're planning to go to 2013 right now, you may want to consider doing a TAP. So.
Question in the back?
I guess I don't really know. Does Exchange fall within your realm of expertise up there?
Sweet.
Sure. This is the man who taught me at Microsoft Master's class.
All right, we've got about 25% of our population, our mailboxes are using for voicemail. Is there any real-world guidance or adjustments needed to be made to the sizing calculator, best practices? We have terrible performance kind of overall with that 25% of those mailboxes.
Okay, so it's interesting. That's a really good question, number one, because the sizing guidance from Microsoft for has always lagged.
It's almost non-existent.
Back in 2007 days, it was, you can have 100 concurrent calls per server, and it's gotten a little better since then, but not all that.
I can't even comprehend what would happen to my Exchange servers if I put 100 concurrent calls on them.
Let's find out. That would be cool.
I don't think anybody's ever done it.
Will it blend? Exchange edition. So when you say performance is terrible, are you getting...
So what happens is... user calls into their voicemail, or for whatever reason, when you get to the voicemail box, by the time the RTP audio wants to come back to play your greeting, to play your message, 5-second delay, 10-second delay, 30-second delay.
Wow, that is terrible. Wow.
It gets worse over time. So we don't know if it's Exchange related, server related. We're kind of troubleshooting everywhere right now, trying to figure out where the bottleneck is.
I would be troubleshooting everything too.
Real quick, are you running antivirus on your servers?
Yeah, but they have the exclusions and such on.
Sure,
I never trust that. I don't trust exclusions, and I don't trust stopping services. But that would be the only thing.
What Jeff says is absolutely true. I just worked with a customer of mine last week who swore, I mean, they sent me screenshots, the whole 9 yards, yes, we have excluded all the log files. And I said, great, well then you can explain to me why I'm seeing ESE error 489, which is what you get when a database or log file is opened by something else when ESE wants it. And when I showed them that, they said, oh, well, how about if we just turn off AV? Yeah, good answer. So, you know, just from a perspective of trying to help you track down where the problem is, I would want to know whether you've run the test commandlets and what kind of output you got from there.
Yeah, I mean, on a normal day, a sunny day, everything works perfect.
Okay.
It's just over a course of maybe 2 weeks. After like a maintenance, we'll do a reboot. Over the course of about 2 weeks, it'll get worse until the point where it's
interesting. So it steadily degrades over time. It's
yes,
not just
and then if we restart certain service, like the hub transport service, for example, it seems to fix the issue. Rebooting the server will fix the issue. That's kind of where we're at with it, and it's with the audio stream. It's the RTP packets coming out where it actually plays the greeting. You know, all the invites happen. The LDAP lookup happened to figure out where your mailbox is at. Everything works. It's just over a course of time that the RTP string, you can see it in the capture where it literally take 10 seconds for it to send the audio out.
Yeah,
so that's why I said I didn't know if it was more of just a general best practices or server sizing.
No, I mean, to be honest, it sounds like your servers are adequately sized. If you get decent performance when they are freshly rebooted, if they degrade over time, that's probably not a sizing issue. That sounds like something I would get PSS engaged on.
Already have.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah. Sunspots?
Isn't there a session about the top support cases with Nino?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Excellent,
we can send him there.
Excellent idea.
So we're considering automating the monthly security patches on our Exchange DAG. Wondering if you had a recommendation on tool set. Would that be Orchestrator or PowerShell or not do it?
So you want to automatically apply those patches?
The security patches that have been approved by our administrators.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. I'll turn that over to the rest of these smart folks, and I just want to make sure we weren't creating Skynet. No, seriously, you always have to be careful. If you're automatically patching anything, you always have to be careful because it is sometimes the case that you take a patch and wish you hadn't, for a variety of reasons, most of which are environmental. So if you've already got that out of the way, then
yeah, this would just be the monthly patches. This wouldn't be CUs.
I don't know if a customer that automatically patches, but we regularly talk about that. Yeah. The problem I see is you have to monitor it anyway. You have to make sure that these patches are basically applied in the right way and the server is operational after it reboots and that the servers are not rebooting at the same times. So by then, probably you can do it on your own anyway.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering if something like Orchestrator would be able to step through that.
I guess you could, but since you're automating a process, are you going to put blind faith in it and hope it sends an email if everything works or if it doesn't
Well, that's
work?
what I was asking you guys, if you do that or if you just say, nah, don't do it.
So I would say don't do it. You know, if something that is that critical to you, make sure that it runs.
Very good, thank you.
Please hold while Jeff is reassembled.
Yes. Okay. I just have a question about preferred architecture for, I don't know if you guys can talk about 2016, but we're currently in a 2010 environment and we're virtualized. And we've worked with our SAN provider, NetApp, as well as VMware. And it seems as though we've had performance with disk latency pretty much since day one, working back and forth with the vendors. We've used the calculators, of course, and not horrible performance, but not what we think we should be getting. So I'm just curious if the industry, the recommendations are moving towards virtualizing or towards staying physical.
You know this is an Exchange session. So we have some very defined guidance in terms of physical is best. We support virtualization, and if you're a virtualization customer, we can totally accommodate you. However, we will run amazingly on physical, but we will accommodate virtual. And so I found that I've had sort of stand-up arguments with customers who've drunk the VMware Kool-Aid or take away the VMware and insert name of virtualization vendor here. And the vendor has promised them that it runs faster virtualized than physical.
I can tell you that's not true.
Yeah. And so then when we have a basic discussion about the rules of physics, and there's a lot of Kool-Aid out there. And so what you've got there is you've got several layers of abstraction. You've got storage abstraction, you've got the hardware abstraction, and everything that goes along with that. And if you get half decent performance, that's great. But you'll find that you'll need to tune each one of those workloads. So the VMware workload in terms of the number of CPUs that you're giving it, the storage workload, the integration between all of those, just to get very decent performance. And for me, that's just not worth it. So I would say if you are reconsidering an architecture, go physical.
Yeah, I think the main thing is as we plan our upgrade to 2016, we want to make sure we do it right. So wanted to get your input.
Yeah, and what Nick is talking about is complexity, right? It's just adding complexity for no benefit. So or very little benefit. So when you have all these abstractions and everything's going through a virtual NIC that's going through one virtual NIC that's shared, or physical NIC that's shared with a lot of other VMs, you just can't see what's going on unless you own the whole stack and you've got the right tools to manage it and monitor it. It's complex. So complexity breeds failure. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
I don't think it's on. Oh, it's on. Okay. I work for a pharmaceutical company, and right now we're looking at a lot of our Salesforce users are going to only use iPads and pretty much download all of their mail onto iPads. We're a bit concerned about ActiveSync traffic. Once there's some type of automatic download or a policy change that forces people to download. And we're a 2010 shop right now. And I'm just wondering, do you guys actually take into account any type of, extra scaling or any type of throttling policies for ActiveSync where if people are using the devices only and downloading the full mailboxes?
Devices only, you said?
Right.
Okay, so that's not going to be a full mailbox download because it is ActiveSync. And ActiveSync is a relatively light protocol. What I would worry about more is the version of iOS that the iPad's running.
We've seen that, yeah. Wrong versions have problems.
Yeah. So you find that some versions of iOS are better than others, and there's not much that you can do about that. I really wouldn't worry about a full mailbox download to an iPad.
Are you going to be using Exchange ActiveSync, or are you going to use one of the new, like Outlook for iOS apps?
Right now, it has been ActiveSync. We're using AirWatch to manage the devices. So I don't. It's a separate team that actually runs the mobility side. So I'm not sure about that, but yeah. If it's something that will help us. Right now, it's we've talked to different. We've got different field engineers that we've talked to, and we don't necessarily have a clear answer as far as any throttling or what we can do. It really kind of depends from what they're telling us. We have to kind of look at our environment and the behavior.
Yeah, personally, I haven't had any issues with very large companies using ActiveSync with multiple devices. Usually is not a problem except for Android.
I mean, you will see a spike for a given user when she synchronizes a brand new device. So, Sally goes down to the Apple store and buys an iPad 7 or whatever, takes it home, puts it on Wi-Fi, turns it on, syncs her mailbox. Right. You are going to see a jump in traffic. You can imagine what that's like on the first day that a new iOS device comes out. If your users are buying their own devices, if they're company supplied, it's probably not going to be as big an issue. But really, just from a scaling perspective, when you think about what Exchange ActiveSync actually looks like on the wire, it doesn't look, in terms of footprint, very different from OWA. So if you have an environment where you would be comfortable having all your users using OWA at the same time, then I think you're going to be okay having them all use EAS at the same time with that initial sync exception. And since not everybody's going to be resyncing their mailboxes at the same time for the most part, I think you're going to be okay.
It's a question to me. I'm sorry. You said how many devices? Right now, it's going to be about 1,500, I believe, that they're going to have. We have 150,000 mailboxes, so it's about 1,500 that are going to run all mailboxes. And at some point, they'd like us to run it out for to roll it out for everyone, to allow everyone to download the entire mailbox. Okay.
Okay. Got someone in the middle here. Excuse me. It's Ignite. You go to parties, you talk loud.
So what's your feeling on the Outlook for iOS app? We blocked it because of the reason.
You read Paul Cunningham's blog, huh? So the question was, what are our feelings about iOS, the Outlook for iOS app, and they block it. Originally, the first instance of it was not secure, was not too secure.
Oh, Jeff, you've done it now.
Greg's wagging his finger at me now.
You hear that buzzing?
This is why
sound?
it's
a
an MVP
drone.
session. You'll never hear anybody from Microsoft say that. So, yeah, there were some things that gave pause, and people would not want to run it. I think most of those have been addressed. There's still some things that are not. I do like the idea of siloing the information and have it so that if I wipe it, I'm just wiping the mail data and I'm not bricking somebody's device. But I use an iPhone and an iPad. Excuse me, and I just use ActiveSync. I've tried the apps. They're just because they don't integrate as well. Click a link and it opens up in the native app, and it's not the best experience. But for me,
I agree with you to a point, Jeff.
Okay.
So let's have a friendly style
that's
argument.
good. That's good.
On the one hand, the Accompli team, when they built what became Outlook, I don't think they were expecting that Microsoft was going to buy them and roll out their product to hundreds of millions of users across iOS and Android. If they had known that, would they have done some things differently? Yeah, I think they would have. I also think that the team could have done a better job of getting out in front of some of those, oh no, it's insecure, some of that messaging when it first emerged. But I think it's really important to look at the track record of that team since then. They are exceptionally responsive. This is something that Satya talks about all the time, about speeding up the cadence. And when you see what Exchange/Outlook has done, when you see what the Link folks have done with their mobile clients, clearly Microsoft is getting on that train. And so, although there were some shortcomings in the original Outlook client, the Accompli guys have been, or ex-Accompli, I suppose, have been keeping a really rapid cadence to fix them. Now, Jeff, I agree 100% that the integration with the other apps on the platform is really poor. I blame that on Apple because they don't give you a way to replace the native handlers on your own. But man, in terms of usability and functionality, Outlook is so much better than the in-the-box iOS apps, and that's not even mentioning Android email apps. It's such a huge improvement that unless you have some really compelling reason not to allow your users to use it, I think you're doing them a disservice if you block it. And I get that there are companies that have security concerns or organizational management concerns, maybe is a way to put it, that means that it has to stay blocked. But it's such an improvement of the experience that I am hopeful that we're going to see the number of companies that disallow it getting smaller and smaller.
So we have about 5 minutes.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Should we account for any performance overhead when we use BitLogger on a JBot? Is that something that has been included in the roles calculator? Okay.
Yeah.
So there is a performance overhead. So there's no performance overhead. Okay.
Yes. It
Depends what you're running now.
That's a valid question.
That not to be more of a smart ass than usual, but I would say that would be a better question to ask tomorrow after Microsoft has talked more about what's in 2016, unless you have very complex change management processes. If you haven't already started moving to 2013, it seems like it would be hard to justify deliberately deploying one version back. Unless it takes you a very long time. For example, I had a large customer that it took them so long to get through the organizational change management hoops that they couldn't deploy a new version when it came out. They were just deploying 2010 last year. Okay, so unless that's you, I think I would wait and see what 2016 is going to offer. I think that's going to make your decision much easier than it would be today.
And don't forget the tab. Yeah, that provides you extra service for free if you're joined with the tab, so you can use them and get support. Of course, you're in test rabbit hole, I can call that. Yeah, you will deploy very early. What means early? Yeah, but at least you skip the version in between, so it saves you a lot of effort. It's free. All is free. Yeah.
Dave will come to your house and wash your car if you.
Yeah. And install your servers and migrate all the mailboxes, correct?
Yeah. He also cooks.
Jeff, we still have our T-shirts, yeah? Don't forget about that.
Yeah, so I've got shirts, and how do we want to do this? Just chuck them out there?
Did we get the
Not without
Ignite
tweeting
brand
it.
T-shirt cannon?
What's that?
Did we get the Ignite brand?
No, we didn't get. Yeah, it's right here, baby.
Yeah.
Not-
Starting tonight
not-
for the San Francisco Giants,
Throwing
it's
out-
Jeff.
Go.
Yeah, I want to make sure.
No,
You get one. You get one. Here you go. Thank you. All right. Okay.
Siggy and I don't want to be responsible for inciting any mob violence, so no.
Okay, I hope this was worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.